Dan Carter is the current mayor of Oshawa. He's always been very open about discussing his struggles with dyslexia, the sexual abuse that he experienced in his youth, and falling into drug and alcohol addiction at the age of 13 after the death of his brother. He was homeless for most of his late teens and 20s, but he rebuilt his life at age 31. Today, he joins us to share his inspiring journey. Welcome, Dan, to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's great to be able to see you. I'm a little jealous because you got a lot more hair than I do, but I'm working.
So there you go. One of those other challenges you're going to maybe face that you are facing, I guess, in your life. Because
Let me put it this way. I'm going to be buying a lot of hats in my future, okay?
Anyways, it is. All right. Well, Dan, it's certainly very clear from what I've read that you have faced a lot of challenges in your life. But it seems that among the first of those challenges was likely just trying to learn how to read and write in school. Can you take us back a bit to your elementary school days?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really unusual thing because I was an adopted child, and my brothers and sisters that were three of them that were older than I think my parents sent me to school just like they did with their children to be able to go to school. And I went to school in the 60s. So you have to understand there's a little bit difference in regards to how education was done in the 60s, the 50s and the 40s and before. And so when I went to school, for myself, more of the frustration of not being able to understand why I couldn't get what was being said and how I could interpret it and why I wasn't able to kind of comprehend the information. That was really difficult for me, but I just, I think as a kid, you just kind of do your best. What became apparent, and I always tell the story by the time I got to grade 4, because I failed grade 1 a couple of times, grade 2 a couple of times. I mean, who fails those grades except for me? But by the time I got to grade 4, I mean, I always tell the story that by the time I got to grade 4, I was driving to school. I mean, that's how much time I spent, and I was looking for a parking permit by that time, But it was a painful experience because when I went to school, I couldn't do the work, and I didn't realize what was wrong with me except for I couldn't do the work. And on the other side is there was not the same patience or the education by educator at that time to identify that this child had a learning disability, and they looked at it as a behavioral issue. And so therefore, many days, my school days were held outside of the classroom with a desk outside the door. And that's where I spent most of my time. And I think what happens is when you're younger, that just loses self-esteem, self-worth, everything. And I think that then you're so scared of trying anything. And I think that was part of my journey. My parents in the 60s, there was a couple of things. You never challenged doctors and you never challenged teachers. They were professionals, and that's the era that I grew up in. And I think that it wasn't until many years later that it became evident. But, being dyslexic and struggling through that period of time, and I could be honest with you, even today, I struggle with it, and I have to do a lot of work now, which was I'm very shameful. You've probably heard the stories about, when you go to the doctor's office, oh, can you fill this out? Oh, I forgot my glasses. That was part of being, going through that journey. But it was really, really, it was the most difficult period of my life. Going to school in the early days and being dyslexic and not knowing what it was and not understanding why I couldn't understand the work, and then getting angry and frustrated at myself, which then just put up a whole bunch of hurdles and walls.
How much different do you think things would have been for you if they had diagnosed you early in ways that they're using to diagnose kids these days?
I have to say that I think it would have brought some peace to me because the hardest person I was on was me. Why can't I do this work? Why don't I understand this? If somebody had said, oh, because you see things differently, you learn differently, we're going to take a different approach. I think it would have made a big difference because I think all we want to do as kids is just fit in. And for me, it was such a shameful thing. I always tell this story. I hope I don't go on, and if I do apologize, and you can cut me off at any time. I'm older than you are, but when I went to school, at the end of the school year, the teacher would stand up 2 days before, and you would get these blue report cards, and they would call out your name. And I remember every single year. The first time it happened was, I think, in grade 1, and kids get these report cards, and my name didn't get called, and I thought, wow, that's wonder why. Maybe they just forgot me. So I put my little hand up, and said, I didn't get a report card. They said, oh, your parents have your report card. So you kind of go, oh, aren't I special, kind of thing. Until, of course, you got home, and then you find out that you're not moving forward. And, that happens time after time after time after time. And you have to imagine, what does that do to one's self-esteem, especially young? And how do they interpret themselves? So if the mechanisms were there, that educators understood that people learn differently, that they have to be taught differently, and that it's not from lack of effort, it's just the interpretation of how you learn, I think it would have made a significant difference in how I saw myself. And I think it would have given me a lot of confidence. I've just taken golf up in the last couple of years, and it's amazing what happens as you get better at it. Your confidence builds. So instead of standing at the tee saying, I just hope I hit the ball. Now you have the expectation, I'm going to hit the ball. I'm going to hit the ball well. And I think it's the same thing when it comes to learning. It's if you enter into it knowing you can do it, I think that changes the perspective of the journey that you're about to embark on. So I think it would have made a significant difference.
Sure. Well, confidence and support in virtually any scenario is going to go a long way, isn't it?
Yeah, sure it is. And it's, especially when you're young. And you know this, when you're young, all you want to do is fit in. You just want it. You don't want to be. Now you've become this special kid that, oh, that's Danny, and I'm doing grade 1 again, doing grade 2 again, doing grade 3 again. And then at the same time, I'm growing. I'm 6'2", and in grade 4, I'm almost 6 foot, and I weigh like a pack of smokes, right? So not only am I tall, not only am I goofy looking, I can't read or write. And I got to tell you something, like the poster boy for getting the crap kicked out of you looks like this, So then that goes to your self-esteem. And all of these things have long tentacles. And I think people don't understand that. And there's a depth to not being diagnosed with a learning disability and having dyslexia, but what happens to an individual of how they see themselves. And that carries on throughout your life. And I think that people don't realize that, I don't think.
Hopefully they're beginning to realize that. We've spoken to, at least educators are beginning to realize that. But yes, the general public certainly is trying to catch up on this one.
And I think, there's a different way of doing that, educating today. Now, I'll be very frank with you, and I'm being honest. I couldn't do the work, and therefore I shouldn't have, because I wasn't prepared to go to the next grade. And so I'm also the guy on the other side. As painful as it was throughout my life to fail, I think it was the right thing that I didn't pass. But at the same time, I wouldn't want anybody else to go through it. But I do believe a standard of education has to be met for an individual to move on. And I think that we're not punishing somebody. I think we're actually preparing them. And I think we're actually helping them. And I wish we would really keep our lens on that some of us learn differently. Some of us struggle with learning. Some of us need a lot of work and a lot of help. And, part of that is helping us be able to cope as we get out into society. It's, when I worked as a young shoe salesman. I was really young. I still remember we had to get people's names and addresses on the sales bill. And I know I always have to ask somebody for their driver's license. Because, if you said Campbell Stewart, I'd go, is that K? I don't know. Like, you know what I'm saying? And so I had to, you create these mechanisms so that you can mask what you are so that nobody knows, because there's a lot of shame that goes. And then you find coping mechanisms to be able to deal with it so that you hopefully don't embarrass yourself. But I think a lot of dyslexic people have gone through that.
Well, it sounds like you spent a lot of years kind of dealing with that sort of workaround as you went from the challenge of dyslexia and learning to read, and then kind of as you began your life, you had to deal with some really serious situations, like a lot of grief and drug abuse, and from what I understand, homelessness at one point, until things finally started turning around for you. And it sounds like at about 31 was when you finally recognized it for what it was.
Yeah, and I had to face all of those fears. I mean, the reason I always talk about I'm an addict and I'm a recovering addict. I got sober the 17th day of June, 1991, and through the love and care and compassion of my sister Maureen, that assisted me through that process, and matter of fact, challenged me. But then I had to deal with the other things, and the other things were, I talked about self-esteem. When you can't read or write, and I'm, by the way, and I'm not mechanical. I can't fix anything. I'm not a carpenter. I don't have that skill or ability, and I also never showed an interest in. What I can do is talk. So it's maybe my wife would like me to talk less, but that's the gift that God gave me, was that I'm an orator and I share that. But when I got sober and I went through that process, I actually had to come to terms about being honest with people and saying, I can't read. And I struggle with spelling and writing. And it's funny, I have a 7-year-old granddaughter, Miss Carolina May now. And we spend a lot of time together, and I love having that opportunity. And she's very, very smart, like very smart. And she'll say, Papa, how do you spell this? And I'll spell it. And she'll go, Papa, I don't think that's right. And she runs upstairs to her dad and says, Papa says you're spelling that. Of course I'm wrong, right? And she's just going into grade 2, right? But what I had to do is, when I got sober, was I had to be honest with people and say, by the way, I have dyslexia, and it's a learning disability, and I struggle reading. And by the way, and I don't spell. And they went, oh, okay. And they said, okay, so is there something can I help you with? Can I, is there a different way of doing it? And I said, no, I just have to prepare different. So when I got into television, I never used a teleprompter. What I did was I memorized everything in regards to bridges, about who I was interviewing. I would do everything I possibly could. I had to prepare long in advance to really get ready for it. But then I started facing my fear. My fear was to learn how to read. And it really is like riding a bicycle or playing golf or anything else. It's one word at a time. And it's being methodical about it. And I actually, believe it or not, picking up a grade 2 reader and starting there, grade 1. I didn't look at the mechanics of it. I needed just to learn the words and memorize the words so I could recognize them later. And, again, those coping mechanisms came into play. And so it was embarrassing, and it was hard for me to do, but that believe it or not, that helped me with my self-confidence, that I knew as an addict, as a recovering addict, I needed to be honest with people, and I needed to be honest with myself. And one way of being able to say to people, I can't read. And they went, what? 30-something years ago, you can't read? And I said, no, I can't. Didn't you go to school? I said, yeah, I went to school. Well, what high school did you go to? I didn't go to high school. What? It doesn't measure to them. Why? And then I would explain what I went through, and they went, oh, okay. And people were really good that way. They gave you the benefit of the doubt. And I think that helped me gain confidence, not only to pick up a reader and start reading and learning how to read, but it also gave me confidence to be confident in myself. And I think that was very relieving. But, I say that, but some of the most painful experiences were when I was in elementary school, not because of the way that I was treated. It was what I experienced. And the one thing I am right now is I read like you wouldn't believe. I don't read fictional. I won't read made up stories. Everything is about biographies, history. It's about politics. I love that kind of stuff. I wanted, because I'm looking for my education, and that's how I do it. And I've got my own mayor's library here that I've got probably about 400 books there. And I put it so that it's open to our staff that they can read. And then I'm more than willing to meet with staff and have a conversation about their interpretation. But yeah, I had to come to terms with that. And that was hard.
Did you ever have a kind of an aha moment at all when you kind of finally felt like you had reached the point that you wanted to be, or that you had kind of overcome the majority of the challenge to kind of reach, I guess, some level that was better than where you found yourself?
I think it was, being honest with people helped take a great deal of stress off. As you can imagine, and you've probably talked to a lot of other people, we're pre-planners. Dyslexics are very pre-planners, right? Where we'll figure out, where those obstacles are, and we plan for it. I think the honesty part was that aha moment that I didn't need to be ashamed of it. I just understood that I was different. And then as I learned how to read better, I think I felt very rewarded. I felt really good about it. And I think that I'm still in that place. I still have to work at it. And I think every time I finish a book, I write on the back the date that I finished it and what year I did it. And I look at it, and I go down to my library here on the second floor and I look at it. Wow. Yeah. My wife was in the office the other day with my granddaughter bringing me lunch. We had a wonderful lunch together. And she said, "Papa, can I see your library?" I said, "Oh." I took her down and I showed it to her. Wow. And my wife said, "Papa's read all these books." She went, "You read all those, Papa?" I said, "Yeah, I have." I felt really, really proud. I also understand that I have to prepare differently, and I work really hard at it. And you're probably aware that now I have to read about 1,000 pages of documents a week. I use color codes in regards to using my reports. I have to use paper. I can't do it electronically. And I use color codes about what's important, what's, kind of a historical point of it. I make sure that I write in the margins about what needs to be done. And, that's part of what I do. I'm never going to be a great speller. And I don't do crosswords or Wordle or any of that kind of stuff. And my wife, when she's doing Wordle, I say, "Just let me know if you need any help." And she said, "Oh yeah, I'll let you." She knows I can't do it. So, but yeah, I think that, taking on the challenge and seeing me be able to do what I'm able to do today is incredible. I'll tell you a very fast story. So I'm going to enter into being a broadcaster when I'm like 33, and I'm doing my internship at CTV and Agent Corp. And I'm the oldest intern that's ever been. And Ken Shaw says to me one time, he says, and by the way, Ken Shaw is one of my best friends today, and we live very close to each other. We have a great. And so he said, "So Danny, I understand that you're sober and everything else, and you want to be a broadcaster." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Most people don't get into broadcasting in their 30s." I said, "Yeah, I know." He said, "I don't know if you know this. This is a visual medium." And I said, "Yeah." He says, "And you're losing your hair." I said, "Yeah, I know that. Think you go somewhere with this kind of thing, right?" And he said, "I understand you're not great at reading." I said, "No, I'm not." He says, "You understand this is about a job about reading, right?" I said, "Yeah." And he says, "You don't spell well either, do you?" I said, "No." He says, "This job's part of writing." I said, "Yeah." And I said, "But I could talk." And he said, "Yeah, you could talk." And he said, Good luck for that, Danny." So he always encouraged me, but he was, and he is the first one to say, how proud of me that I was able to work as a broadcaster for over 20 years, now as a mayor, as an elected official, and the work that I've done. and I do a speech that I talk about being, and the entitlement is being punished or prepared. And I talk about all of the issues from, being dyslexic and my learning disability to being raped when I was 7, the death of my brother when I was 13, my addiction for 17 years, being homeless, the suicide of my sister, all of these things. I at one time looked at it that I must be being punished for something. And then I finally realized that maybe I was being prepared for something. And I'm glad other people don't have to be prepared the way I. But it gives me an opportunity like this to talk about, how many thousands or millions of people struggle with reading and writing and that are dyslexic and learn differently. And sometimes we lose hope that we'll ever be able to do more than, maybe, a menial job. And, what it does show you is that there is possibilities that await you. And that if we can just embrace the differences that we have and then be honest with people, there's an amazing opportunity that awaits us all. But it's about, seeing ourselves as gifted, talented individuals that have something to contribute. And I think that comes with the self-confidence. So when that happens, amazing things happen. Who would have ever thought? And I'll tell you this, who would have ever thought that all of the things that I've gone through, I would be a mayor of a major city.
I know. It's like a story out of a movie.
It's crazy. I walk down the aisle every time and I see my name played on there and go, can you believe it?
Oh, yeah. Well, someone's going to do a great biography about you someday, for sure.
It's just wild. I was walking up Simcoe Street when I got elected, and the headlines across the country, it was very, very funny, said, homeless man becomes mayor. And I had to say to the media, you understand I wasn't homeless at the time I ran for mayor, right? Somebody did come up and say, listen, you got anything going today? And I went, listen, I'm homeless. I got nothing going. Sure. You want to be mayor? Why not? Let's give it a go. Right? But it was funny. I'm walking up and I got a lot of media attention from across the country. And Dwight Drummond, I don't know if you know Dwight Drummond from City TV. Here's a guy that started at CP24. He was a videographer, hardworking camera guy, then became a reporter. Now he's the anchor at CBC News at 5. And he's walking up the street with me, and we're doing this interview after I get elected. And he said, Mayor-elect Carter, he said, can you imagine? He said, I can't believe that a guy that has got as many challenges as you did got elected mayor. And I looked at him and I said, isn't it amazing that a kid from Jane and Finch is the anchor of the CBC News at 5? I said, it's amazing, isn't it? And we kind of laughed as we walked up, because those two possibilities, if anybody told us at the very beginning, there's no possible way that was going to happen. But here we are walking up the street going, man, we come from two different neighborhoods with two different types of struggles, but look at what we've been able to do because we believe in ourselves. And I just thought that was a magical moment.
Absolutely. Well, you seem to want to spread the good word as far as people getting help with dyslexia and believing in themselves and that type of thing. And I wonder, what you would have told your 8-year-old self now if you had an opportunity.
And that's a really hard question. I don't know what I would tell my I wish I could have been more positive in regards to just looking that I'm different and that I learned differently. I wish I could have understood that, because it goes back to self-esteem. And I think that would have helped. I think that for all those, the great thing about all of us is we're unique individuals. We look differently. We have different gifts and talents. We have different directions in life. Where we start, where we finish is in many circumstances are so different. People go to college and university and get a degree in one thing and end up doing something totally different. And I think what I would hope to understand as an 8-year-old is A, that I am different and I embrace it. B is that I learn differently and I just have to embrace that also. But it's early days, and this journey is a long journey. It really is a long haul that we go. And the wonderful thing about life is it is going to continue to challenge us. All of us are going to lose people we love. We're going to get let down by somebody. We're going to lose a job. We're, not going to win that award. We're, all of those things happen. I was emceeing an event one night for a business awards dinner, and I was nominated for one of the awards as the MC, believe it or not. And of course, I lost, eh? And I had to make fun of it. I said, everybody says that, it's just an honor to be nominated. I said, and that sucks, okay? I want to win. But we're going to go through all these in our lives, right? And I think the wonderful thing about it is if we really look at that perspective of being prepared and not punished, I think that really puts things into perspective. There's one other thing that then if I could share with you. My mayor's address last year came off of something that really resonated with me. I don't know if you watch streaming television, but one of my favorite shows was Ted Lasso. And I don't know if you've ever seen Ted Lasso.
Sure.
But there's something really wonderful about that. And I utilized the opportunity of one scene within that series, which is where he's in this pub early days. Rupert, which is the former owner of the soccer team, is kind of talking down to him. And, Ted's kind of a happy-go-lucky kind of guy, but you could tell that, he's had challenges in his life. And Rebecca, that owns the team now in the divorce settlements there, and there's this dart game that happens. And I don't know if you know the scene itself, but the dart scene kind of goes like this. Ted picks up a dart. That's really heavy. And Rupert goes, oh, would you like to play darts, Ted? And he said, well, sure, why not, right? And Rupert opens up this case with these beautiful darts, and everybody goes, oh. And he says, Ted, I always find darts really interesting when we have a wager. And so the wager is something like this. If Rupert, that used to own the team, will sit in the owner's box the whole season if he wins, and if he loses to Ted, he won't come to the game and that. So I'm paraphrasing. And Ted says, sure. And the whole crowd goes, Ted, what are you doing? The whole thing. And this dialogue's a beautiful dialogue, especially for those that have faced challenges in their lives. And the dialogue goes something like this. He says, Rupert, he said, it's amazing to me. He said, all my life, people have looked at me and looked down at me, and bullied me, and I never understood why. And he said, then one day, he said, I saw this billboard that said, be curious, not judgmental, by Walt Whitman. And he said, I really thought that was amazing. And as he picked up the dart, he said, because if people were curious, they'd ask things like this. Have you ever played darts before? And he throws the first dart and it hits triple 20. And my answer would be, matter of fact, every Saturday, since I was 10 years old till I was 16 when my dad died, we played darts every Saturday. And he throws the next dart. And I thought, that to me really, and of course he wins the dart game, but it was more so about people are not curious. They're not curious about themselves, or they're not curious about others. We judge people based upon maybe what we hear or see. And we're not curious enough to know what are the gifts and the talents that they have. And you start looking at that, and that whole scene really played dividends. Can I show you something?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
My team at City Hall, right, thought it would be appropriate to give me this.
The unofficial Ted Lasso coloring book.
And they actually, look at this. There's the dartboard, right?
Oh, wow.
And there's the thing, be curious, not judgmental. And so our senior leadership team bought that for me because it not only reflected our community, but really reflected me. And I thought it was really good because I always wonder, did the educators that educated me, did they ever get curious about how I ended up? Those people that passed judgment on me and thought I was just a dumb kid that, was just, uncoordinated and a goofy kid that, they just kind of think, it's probably out in the ditch. How about the people that saw me struggle through addiction? And were they ever curious about why maybe addiction was part of my life? And if you were curious, you would find out that, having dyslexia and my self-esteem and self-worth, that played a significant role. But all these events played a significant role in my life. Um, and if they were curious, they'd actually be able to see that there was a lot more to me than maybe they thought. And I think that that's why it really resonates with me. So, for your audience, I hope people will continue to be curious. If you have dyslexia, be curious. There is so many people out there that have dyslexia that are gifted, talented individuals that have accomplished things that they never dreamed about. A passion pushed, and they embraced their shortcomings, but they were able to take those shortcomings and really be able to contribute to somebody else's life. And it's wonderful to be able to sit back and think, out of this podcast, maybe somebody's, there's a parent out there that's probably trying to look for the right answer for their kid because they can just see them suffering. And they believe in their kids so much, and they just want to protect them so. And they're probably hoping and praying that something will click. And maybe, what you and I talked about today, maybe they'll go, oh boy, there's a bright future that still awaits them. And I think wouldn't that be wonderful to think that would happen? Anyway.
I think that is a great way to look at it. Absolutely. Because you're not alone in that. Certainly, we all hope that our kids are going to get well educated. And you talked about your granddaughter, your 7-year-old granddaughter with such passion. I know you must have just been watching her closely as she made her kind of journey on learning how to read, right?
It's amazing. And the amazing thing is her father is very, very intelligent, and they spoke to her in a very adult way when they've talked to her. But it's amazing. She was saying something about, cicadas the other night. She was at the house, and it was a hot night, and I went, hear the cicadas. And she said, Papa, you know how they make that noise, right? And I went, no. How they make it? Well, they bury themselves down, and then they flip this thing, and that's where the sound comes from. I went, yeah, I knew that. She goes, Papa, you didn't. I mean, how much better could that be, right? I mean, so, seeing her with that type of knowledge and seeing her embrace it, and, and her, every night her dad reads to her in bed, and, her reading is incredible. I mean, she's reading at a grade 4 level. She's just going into grade 2, and she's just this really smart girl. It's just a wonderful thing to witness. And, the one key is, I always say, and I have grandkids now. So one of the things that I've done is set up education funds for all 3 of the grandkids. And one of the things that I really understand now is education is such a great foundational piece that if you have the opportunity to get a good education, then that really gives you a great foundation to start from. And so I see there's a lot of value instead of being a place of darkness and fear. So, it is. It's really cool to watch her. But man, she's smart. She's so smart.
It's good. Well, you've had quite a life. Absolutely. You've overcome so many obstacles, dealt with all those challenges to get where you are today as the mayor. It's still getting called Mr. Mayor, I'm sure must be an interesting thing in the hallways.
Yeah, I say that to my wife. Do you realize I'm your mayor? She said, well, Mr. Mayor, you got to take the garbage out. Those reality checks come in.
There you go. You're still just a regular guy, right?
Yeah, I'm still Dan. It doesn't matter, right? I'm not that special. That's what I found out.
Hey, Dan, thank you so much for sharing your story today and joining us here on the podcast. We really appreciate spending this time with you. It's been great.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be able to spend time with you. I wish you all the best, and thank you for your efforts. It's going to make a difference in somebody's life, and that's really, really important. So listen, all the best to you and your family, and I look forward to our next conversation.